Okay, we are live.
Great.
Donna, you can
Great.
start speaking.
Yeah, so let me start. So, hi, GMAT Club. Actually, it's really fun to actually be on. I'm on the GMAT Club a lot, commenting as Stratus MBA counselor. So, welcome to all of you who know me that way. I'm Donna Bowman. I'm here with my colleague Melissa Prevost, and we are hopefully we want to make this very conversational for you. So, we have a presentation about how to use an MBA to pivot or change careers. So we're going to go through that, but also we want to make sure that we want to answer your questions. So I think there's some chat rooms set up, some ways for you to make comments. Melissa's going to be monitoring that. Before we jump into the presentation, I'll just say a little bit about myself. I went to Kellogg for my MBA. I went to my undergrad at UNC Kenan-Flagler. I spent many years on the admissions team at UNC Kenan-Flagler, so I do understand the admissions side and how admissions officers think. I also have worked for the past 4.5 years with Stratus, actually 4 years, helping people get into all kinds of MBA programs, helping them think through, how to use an MBA to pivot or change careers. So that's a little bit about me. Melissa, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi. I've my cameras internet in this wonderful new world again. Just want to say, hope everyone's well and your families are healthy in this crazy time. My background is engineering. I studied engineering for undergrad at the University of Illinois and then went to Haas for business school. I spent most of my career in either consulting or operations. And most recently have come into education, both from a K-12 perspective and then in the last 4 years, as well as Donna, working with Stratus. And before that, I was an alumni interview pause, and I found that part of the reason I became an admissions consultant was I would find someone was on the other end and they'd have a nugget of information and I couldn't quite get it out. So I wanted to hop on the other side of the table and help them. So that's essentially what we do as consultants. So I'm enjoying that. Donna, wondering if you can hear me okay.
I can. It's a little choppy.
Okay.
But I could hear you, and I get that. So
Okay.
let me jump in, and if it turns out that some of the pieces that are, we'll just monitor it and see how choppy it is, and if I need to chime in more, I will. We're going to just say really quickly. Most of you probably know what admissions counseling is if you're in this, and I want to also put a plug to say all of you who are on the GMAT Club on this now. Good for you for using your shelter in place time to keep bettering yourself. These challenging times provide an opportunity to either get better or get worse. And you being on here today means that you want to get better and work on your future. So good for you. And that's a little bit of a segue. Admissions counseling. I mean, I think it can be a lot of things to different people, but for us at Stratus, we really like to think of it. We hope that we are making your life easier if you choose to use a coach, in terms of helping you work smart and focus on the things that matter most. That if you want to, talk about career goals, talk about strategies that you might have, that's what we enjoy doing. And we as a firm have been around since 2006. We have, we're been active in GMAT Club, active in a lot of different forums. The two things that I think, just as a chance to tell you maybe more about Stratus in this forum, the two things that I think differentiate us the most are that one, we're very collaborative and team-based, and just the fact that most of our webinars we do with 2 counselors at least to show how collaborative. But when you work with us, you don't just work with one client, one coach. There are many people at Stratus. You have a strategist. There are people from each. So if you're applying to a couple different schools, you would have some input from one of our coaches who's maybe a Harvard alum for your Harvard application, somebody else for Ross if it's Ross, it's one of your schools. So it's very collaborative. All of our counselors have an MBA from a top program. So that's important. And then the second thing that makes us unique is that we have something called a 4-school guarantee, which means that we have a little bit of a vested stake in trying to help you get to the finish line and the right finish line for you. And that means if you apply, for those of you who are on, you're the early birds, you're the people who are thinking ahead. So if you're applying in round 1 and you are unsuccessful, if you work with us on 4 schools, and by unsuccessful, that means that you're on the wait list or that you've been denied, you can work with us in November, December to get 2 more schools applications done for free. And nobody does that. And that is just something that says a little bit about, again, that we're really trying to help you. Sometimes it takes more than one shot to get in these top programs. So we're trying to be with you and help make this, be with you in that. So that's enough about us. And let's get into basically talking about this career pivot and change. And to do that, it helps to just step back and think about, there are several areas of evaluation that an admissions committee is looking at when they're reviewing your application. And if you think of each of these as levers, really the more likely you are, and let's just say that on each of these scales, you could get sort of an A through an F or a 1 to 5, whatever you want to use as a rating scale. But let's go ahead and work with A through F, since that's pretty clear which is better and which is worse. So in each of these areas, first of all, the more you have A's in all of these areas in your overall package, the easier it is to convince admissions of making a pivot or a change. And let me go into each area and give you some ideas of what I'm talking about. So, because these are also areas that you can use yourself beyond what admissions is evaluating, you can use them to think about, how can I use these to help me make a pivot or a change? So in academics and quantitative readiness, you want to make sure the admissions person is just wanting to make sure that you can do the work and that you're not going to be a drag into the program, and also that you have the background to be able to make the pivot or change that you want. So let's imagine that you were in accounting now, and you're thinking you want to make a change and work into investment management. You could think back, maybe there was something in your undergrad where you were involved in an investment management club, and that trail, that piece of your past, that could be something that you bring forward and you put into your application to help an admissions team see that this new direction that you want to go to is rooted in some of your past. In your work experience, you want to think about, how can you leverage something from your past. So for example, maybe you worked in consulting, but you had a lot of healthcare industry experience. You had a lot of clients there. And now you're wanting to go work for a pharmaceutical company. Again, in putting together your application, you want to leverage and show how that healthcare industry knowledge that you gained from consulting is going to be helpful. In your leadership and community involvement, this is a really big area for you to be able to to think about. Maybe there was a nonprofit that you were involved in that had something to do with sustainability, and that is part of what you want to do post MBA. So you can think about making those connections. And don't forget recommenders. Recommenders are really important, both, and this is where in other webinars I've talked about how it's important to share with your recommender what your goals are, and so that they understand why you want the MBA. So your recommender can also highlight, things about your background and your past that they think that you would be successful making this change, and their endorsement can help the admissions committee to feel more comfortable about it too. And then finally, the essays, obviously. And this is where, sometimes when you work with an admissions consultant or just be reflective, think about, maybe I'm going to choose some of the things to write about that will help fill in the dots, maybe help admissions understand why you're passionate about a certain field. So those are just some things to keep in mind. The bottom line is really, admissions wants to make sure that you have the skills to make the transition, and that you know enough about the industry that you're going to be successful. And when in doubt, spell it out for admissions, because you don't want them guessing. So you really want to give them that information. So with that, I'm going to have Melissa take the pivot piece, and because pivot and change, as you'll see, we see them as a little bit, we're on a spectrum, almost on a continuum, but I'll hand it back over to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, so I think, as Donna said, a spectrum is a great way to think about pivot versus change, because there's, different ways that you can pivot or change. When we think about pivots, there's really 4 aspects that we think about, how your career could change. So industry, function, geography, and the size of the company. So startup, medium, large that you might work at. The more aspects you change, as we talk about this continuum, the more you really need to explain the change to admissions so that admissions can understand why you want to make the change and that that this is a feasible change for you to make. So a pivot is making, one or fewer changes, changing one or fewer attributes, and then a change is more, so 2 or 3. Some examples just to put it in perspective. You might want to pivot from New York to San Francisco. So tech industry is very bi-coastal. You could leverage your MBA to change locations. You might be moving in tech product management across the country. You could pivot from a product manager in tech to a larger firm. So going from a startup to, say, a Google or a Facebook. You could pivot within function. So you want to stay in the same industry. You want to stay, you're currently within commercial real estate sales, and you want to pivot to a product manager or business development at a company like WeWork that's doing larger scale commercial real estate. Some examples of changes might be you want to change from a product manager in consumer products to in the Midwest to a product manager in technology in Europe. So again, leveraging that MBA to help you change both industries and location. You change from strategy consulting to banking, industry and function there, or change from nonprofit management to sustainable investing at a large bank. So you're going industry and size. So really what you want to do is through the skills and experiences that you've had from your existing career so that you can talk about what you're bringing to the table and can leverage through your career, your extracurricular activities, and your personal life, and how you're going to leverage that into your future career. Donna, if you want to go to the next slide. And so that comes to articulating your goals. We talk with lots of people throughout the day. Setting goals is something that's an important part of the MBA process. Sometimes it's really painful, and sometimes it's a lot easier. Kind of depends on how it's coming to the. But
I think I'm just not hearing you right now, Melissa. So I wonder if we just had a little teeny bit of a glitch, and while that's happening, or can I hear you now or no?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Sorry about that. Sorry, everybody on my technical end. You want to be able to explain how an MBA is going to help you fill the gap between your current experience to
yeah, and you know what? And I think, let me just jump in, Melissa, just because I think it's a little, maybe we'll give your computer a rest there, but just to what Melissa was saying was really, again, you take what you have and then you get the MBA, and we really work a lot with our clients on figuring out what do you need from the MBA? What are your key development areas? And that's really important so that you'll be able to come out on the other end with an MBA. With that being successful in your career goals. So with that, we're going to share a couple of examples. Are you okay if I just move on, Melissa? Oh, I can't even hear you right now. So we like to talk, hopefully learn from other people's experiences and hopefully see what we're talking about with an example. So this is someone I worked with a couple of years ago who, before their MBA, had kind of a sales background in a healthcare biotech startup, and really didn't have a lot of work experience, was then wanting to transition to in the short term, to a consulting role in long-term product management in the healthcare biotech field. So in that in-between stage, what was important for this person? This person really wanted to get some experiential learning because she didn't have a lot of work experience. So she was looking for programs that were going to be able to help her get that experience, looking for programs with strong healthcare knowledge, and then also wanting to build leadership so she'd be successful. She was looking to, make a switch from, we call this a pivot, in that She did have the same, she at least had some healthcare industry experience. She was making a shift in terms of function, but she was also not really looking to change in terms of location. And so that's a little bit of her story. And what she did, and she was actually successful in making this switch, but she leveraged her science. She had an undergrad background in science, so she leveraged that in the application. She leveraged, she had some really strong community leadership. So while she didn't have as much work experience, she leveraged some leadership that she had outside of work. Her recommenders were able to really speak to her passion for biotech and also her impact at work. And with this approach, and then when she ended up getting big scholarships actually at several schools, Keenan Flagler, Ross, Fuqua. She ended up at Fuqua, and what was really helpful about Fuqua is they have that health sector management certificate. So right out the gates, before she even started her MBA, she was in a week-long, intensive program where she got introduced to a lot of healthcare recruiters. She had a cohort to go through. She was able to do things at Fuqua like the FCCP, the Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum. So she was able to get some really good experience. So again, that's a success story of someone who really thought about what they needed and then was methodical about getting that, knowing what they were looking for and finding it in their MBA program and being successful. So Melissa, I think, has another example. So I'll let you, if you can hear me, Melissa.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So this is another example, also in healthcare or biotech. This woman was an engineer, and she had worked, and she had actually applied to programs before and came to us with her second application cycle. She was had worked in engineering and really wanted to move up within management of engineering, and she was finding that transition difficult to make. So she looked to an MBA to help make that transition happen. So to move from kind of the engineering tech side of biotech into more of a product management, and then they're up within the side. So pre-MBA, she was an engineer. She had the tech that was and then also, she had done a lot of leadership within a music group that she traveled with internationally, and had done a lot of mentorship within her company. So we really leveraged those skills. Pre-MBA, she was looking for a program that could teach her that cross-functional leadership. She had led projects primarily in engineering, and had developed cross-functional relationships, but really wanted to be able to lead cross-functionally across the organization. So she was looking for leadership and really business acumen. And post-MBA, she wanted to be a product manager, as we mentioned. She ended up at Fuqua, and part of what really drew her to Fuqua. And Donna, you're smiling.
I'm laughing only because we didn't necessarily mean to do a Fuqua ad in there, but it turns out there's some good things. So it's a bonus for Fuqua, right?
No, part of what was, what drew her to the program were really, there was a certificate in leadership management, the certificate in the health sector management program, conference, and the pieces of the program spoke to her, and she was really with students at Fuqua that I think really helped her. Her work in her essays, she really focused on her cross-functional leadership that she had, as well as spoke about, we asked her recommenders, as we were talking about how important pieces are. Her recommenders really spoke of her leadership potential, and her ability to grow. So that is that's that example. Donna, I think you have one more.
Yeah, I do have one more, but I'm also kind of wanting to watch the time and make sure that we get through everything. So I'm just going to do this one really quickly. This is just a different client that I worked with where he made a shift where he was in retail, had worked with some consultants and actually been able to do some pro bono consulting with a startup on the side. You can kind of see here. So again, just really quickly, wanted to have an MBA for leadership experience, for sort of getting more finance and operations knowledge, and was successful in making, well, actually was successful in at least getting into lots of really top business schools, including Harvard, Kellogg, Haas. So definitely worked well and was wanting to pivot or into strategy consulting. And I think he had a good background for that. So I want to a little bit just here, but I want to kind of move on because I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'm going to move to this slide, come back again to this slide, and Melissa talked about it where, again, the more boxes you want to change, the more it becomes a change as opposed to a pivot. And really the more work you have to do, both in doing research about schools and where you're going to be able to get the most help, and in talking to people. And, this is something that maybe we'll talk about with the questions at the end, but people always, so many times, and I'm sure, Melissa, you've had this too, where people are like, you're looking for someone to tell you what to be when you grow up, right? And spoiler alert, nobody can really do that. And I tend to think that people should really not overthink what admissions wants to hear and really just authentically, try to apply with what it is that they really want to do. Because in going through that process, you're going to be more authentic. And, again, what's the point? If anything, this COVID stuff is, I think, made everybody realize, life is short. And so, why waste time pretending to say what somebody else wants to hear, as opposed to just trying to really, do the best you can. And rest assured that admissions teams know that people change their mind once they get in, because you learn new things in your classes. So any thoughts about that, Melissa, as well?
No, I think, we hear from schools why, that they know that people change their minds. And so, we ask, well, why is it so important to have goals? And, part of the answer that we get back is, if you, then schools have the understanding and the confidence that you can create a new plan to that new goal. You're going to be exposed to so many things when you're in business school, and it goes so fast that you need to come in with a plan so you can take advantage of everything that you need to be successful on the other end.
Right. Yeah. So that, I think you might have gone out a little bit on there. So I'll just restate what you said in terms of, right, the exercise of sort of planning what you think you want and how you're going to get there is going to be useful as you iterate through your life, really. So even if you don't end up doing these things, it's useful going into an MBA program to do it. So to my point that you have to do a little bit more work when you are looking to make a change, let me give you a couple examples of how that might look. So let's say you want to go into real estate. You want to change from maybe consulting to real estate finance. Okay. And you want to work in the Southeast. So that's just sort of an example. So then you start looking at a lot of different schools. And these are two schools that I have both alums. So I'm going to use them as an example. So Kellogg and UNC Kenan-Flagler both have a real estate concentration. They both offer a lot of electives around real estate, right? But if you start digging into the program, like employment reports and things like that, you're going to see that 12% of the MBA class at UNC in 2019 went into real estate of some kind, whereas only 2% did at Kellogg. So again, that might say to yourself, well, if I want to work in real estate, and again, in the Southeast, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, even though Kellogg's higher ranked than UNC Kenan-Flagler, maybe you might actually have some more, you're going to have more classmates who have that interest perhaps at UNC Kenan-Flagler. So that's a great example of where you don't always just want to look only at rankings. You really want to look at your situation. And I'm going to layer onto that. 3% of the class of 2019 at Kellogg went to work somewhere in the South. And Kellogg actually defines the South as pretty, like, from Texas to Florida, all the way up to like North Carolina, Virginia. So it's a pretty wide swath. That is not a place where you're going to see a lot of Kellogg alums. I'm one of them, but there aren't too many of us. Whereas if you contrast that with Keenan Flagler, if you really wanted to be in the Southeast in real estate, 46% of the class in 2019, if you use the same general geography, worked somewhere in that large region I just described, the South. So again, you really want to think about where you want to go and what schools are going to help have the resource to help you and are successful sending a lot of people to the places you want to go. So that's just something to keep in mind. So let's go ahead, and I think, Melissa, you've got an example here of a change, so I'll let you tell that.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I think this change really talking about came to us again in a second round of applications. Her background was she had definitely different experience. She had worked in healthcare consulting as well as financial sales, and different experiences before business school. And really, her goal was to get into media and entertainment. That is something that she really wanted to do. So we spent a lot of time talking about why that was. And we found a thread of a personal tie to art throughout her whole life. She grew up in a non-English speaking household and learned English actually watching TV. She had always taken art classes and drawing classes throughout her schooling, as well as took a drama class in college. So there was this tie that we could pull through her application from an entertainment perspective. So we talked about, from a skills perspective, that she could leverage her skills that she learned in persuasion, that she learned in financial sales. And so, this was something that we packaged together. What was interesting is, when she came to us in her first round of applications, she had said that she wanted to do consulting post MBA because she thought that was a safe, go to business school, come out as a consultant. And while there are many, many people that want to do consulting, and consulting is absolutely the right choice for them, she was doing it to be the safe option. And as we dug in, it really came clear that was not something that she was passionate about. So as we started talking about entertainment, she became more passionate. She got excited about reaching out to schools that had strong entertainment focuses. And so she was looking for programs that had an entertainment focus. She could learn the financial analysis and the operations side, really to come out and be more of a financial analyst on the media and entertainment side. Through her research, she really drew a strong tie to NYU and UCLA because of the center. So she ended up at UCLA they have a Center for Management of Media and Enterprise and Media and Entertainment Sports. They have a career path for entertainment management, entertainment case competition, a Pulse conference that's all about around these programs that had looking for. She got genuinely excited, and there was a strong connection between her and the schools. So, I think with a larger change, it's really important to find that connection and really be able to explain to admissions why you want to make this change and show that you have the skills to be successful with a larger change.
Got it.
So then I'll pass it back over to you. How'd that come out? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's funny. You can probably, I can't see my face right now, but you can. I'm trying to, it's almost like I think if I move my face a little, it's going to help the internet connection go, but I don't think it's that way.
We can only hope.
Yeah. But anyway, this next example is, I think, a change that a lot of people want to make. And so I think this could be useful to go through. This is a case of someone who had a financial services consulting background, who did have, in terms of thinking, what are some of the assets that he brought was strong global experience, risk management, payments, and strategy knowledge. Like a lot of people, and this is something that I often caution people in saying as a goal, just in the sense that it's tough to get into any kind of VC post MBA or PE if you haven't worked in that area prior to an MBA. But this client really did a good job, and I'll try to walk through some of the things that he did really well. First of all, again, making a pretty big change. He identified some of the things that he had that were transferable. Again, so having that risk management, payments strategy knowledge was valuable. He identified that he was looking for an MBA program that had a lot of emphasis around fintech and really a deep dive in finance. Lots of opportunities for PE, VC, experiential learning, and again, growing in his own leadership. So the school that he ended up going to is Booth, and they have a lot of really excellent resources for people who are making a change like this. One of the things they have is actually, and I don't think he did it necessarily through Booth, but they have a pre-MBA internship for people who want to do PEVC, where you can get an internship and actually work, let's say in the olden days before COVID, where there was some more fluidity, and I don't know how this is working now, but where you could work with an alum, a Booth alum who was looking for some extra help, and the admissions team set that up so that maybe you stopped your job in April and maybe May and June you did something where you actually gained some experience prior to starting your MBA, which just jump-started that transition. So Booth and the Polsky Center for Private Equity and Venture Capital and the New Venture Challenge, those are some activities that he was also involved in when he was a student there. And that really helped him so that he was actually able to get some experience working with some startups. He did multiple internships when he was in Chicago at VC firms while he was a student. He was able to leverage, again, some of his international experience and some of his cybersecurity investments experience that he had. And he has made a successful transition where now post MBA, he is investing in AI and cybersecurity. Again, a great example of think about knowing what you have that can be helpful in the transition, picking a school that's going to have the right resources and help you make the right connections to make that transition. So again, anything can happen, and it's good to, I think, show examples like that. So here's Melissa. I think you have one more.
All right. I'm chatting away here as well, and I'm writing things too long, so I apologize if it's taking a second. I'm getting stuck on the 200 character limit, so I promise I'll keep responding here.
Oh, good. Okay.
So my last example of a larger change, again, ties back to kind of a personal story, I think. This client was working in healthcare consulting. I'm kind of feeling like all my examples are healthcare. I hadn't realized that when we put this together, but a lot of them are changing in different ways. So he really in undergrad, and his passion light and energy. And so he wanted to make really a change in energy because he had been healthcare consulting and he really wanted to go more on the product end of renewable energy. So it sounds like a big change. Again, digging into introspection with him, what we were able to pull out were strings throughout his story that really made this change make sense for him. So he had done a senior project in undergrad around engineering. He had set up a recycling and green campaign office to drive renewability. And he had one of the schools that he was applying to had an energy conference. And so he went to the energy conference and was really able to show his passion and commitment, although he hadn't been working in energy, that this is really where he wanted his long-term to go. So, he had a strong academic performance, and his senior project, he was able to pull experiences from that out. From a work experience standpoint, he really talked about his problem solving of consulting and how important that would be for innovation in renewable energy. Extracurricularly, he had started this green campaign at work and the energy conference, and then from a recommender's perspective, he kind of took two different tacks with two different recommenders. One was from an innovation perspective, and the other, he has to focus on his leadership within different projects within the company. And in his essays, he really talked about how energy had been a part of his life throughout. So he was accepted at Booth, Haas, and Kellogg, but really chose Kellogg because of, he was looking for the overall innovation, well-roundedness, and with Kellogg's innovation and in interactive center and they have an energy and sustainability pathway. And he actually found a gym trip that visited to Africa that specifically worked on energy in kind of emerging markets. And that was something that was really interesting to him. So that was, a larger change on the surface. But, I think what's important is really making that story personal and really coming out uniquely to admissions as to why this story makes sense for you. Donna, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think at this point, and I think I feel a little bit like I'm missing the party because I can't see the questions, but hopefully you have a lot of questions. I will say that I'm just going to put this up here in terms of saying that we've got a couple things coming up on just you can register to a compelling goals essay that we're doing, and you can do that from our website. So if you want to go deeper dive into goals, which definitely this is sort of a related topic, so a little bit of a different twist coming up there, and that we're always available for a free consult at this link here, and I think that might be posted in the chat anyway. But other than that, I think we really just want to open it up for questions. And like I said, you might, Melissa, read them out or something, or if they're, things, because I can't.
Yeah. So I've got a good one here. I've from Miyaski. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. So 8 years of working experience. Am I too old for an MBA? I've read that the average work experience is 5 years.
I'll take that. Yeah, let me take that since I've been on the admissions side. And, I will say, first of all, in any program, there's always a range. And so while the average at most of these programs is 5 years, at the top programs, it can go, there's usually a late 30s or even early 40s person in every class. Obviously, the older you get, the more likely you would be looking at an executive MBA program or maybe an evening program where more of the people are closer to your age, and you may find that that's valuable. But I would say 8 years is not too late. And really, the bulk, I'd say, 8 or 9 years is kind of at the far end, but it's not too late, and it's funny. I'm sure that you think you're so old with just 8 years, but really, you have so much more of your career ahead of you. So don't buy into that. And I think that the only way you'll know for sure is apply. And sometimes what happens is if people apply to the full-time program and they're not successful, sometimes schools even ask in the application process, okay, at that point, maybe you look at the evening or the weekend or a different program. But, if you really want to do the full-time program because it's just more immersive, where you're really, I think it's easier to make a change when you are doing it full-time as opposed to trying to juggle job and life and everything else. So I wouldn't discourage you from giving it a shot.
All right, great. We have another question here that is around if there are some schools that are easier to get into for pivoting careers, hearing that potentially Wharton's not the easiest. Just wondering on validating that point there.
I don't know that I agree with that specifically for Wharton. I think that Wharton has some really interesting resources. Like I'm just thinking about the Baker Retail Center. So if you had wanted to do something, post MBA with retail and you didn't have that experience going in, there's some great resources there. There's some great resources around fintech, healthcare. So I don't know that I don't think there's nothing that I've ever heard or in the interactions listening to the admissions team at Wharton talk that would say that they're any different than any other program. I think what's really important, and maybe the example I gave about, do the digging, do your due diligence right now, where, look at the employment reports at some of these schools. And definitely there are certain schools that are going to send more people into, again, into healthcare, or more people into real estate, or more people into a particular, whatever it is that you're looking to do. And then also reach out to people in the clubs and get a sense of, what are the companies that are hiring, and almost look at it from backing through it. So I don't think that there's any program that doesn't have people make changes. And I think that which program is the right one for you depends on which change you want to make, and how is that something that the school, has the more people that are sort of like you. So even finding people through the clubs that have a background that's similar to yours can be very helpful. And I would steer away from just sort of absolutes, like there's these 5 schools are the best. But one school that comes to mind, Ross, is great at experiential learning through the MAP program. So can be something that's very valuable. Again, all schools have some kind of experiential learning, but Ross is one that I think is known for that. Tuck also has the sort of Tuck Go experiences, and those can be very helpful. But I think you really have to dig into your specific situation and find your specific right schools. But I think change could happen anywhere. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Melissa, or that maybe that I didn't touch on?
No, the only additional thought is, just thinking of the, can you hear me, Donna?
Yeah, yes, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
That you're thinking of the environment that we're heading into for this next year is, arguably to be a more competitive environment. We don't know yet, obviously, but historically, recessions have seen an increase in applications. So assuming that history ends up being true, just thinking through, a larger change I think you just need to have the story behind the why, and really show evidence through your personal life that this is something that's not just a whim, that it's actually been something that you've been planning for in addition. Because I think that, with the increased competitiveness, there might be just more digging into that why and understanding that change from a personal standpoint.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't, I definitely am a big fan of saying, as much as you can, saying your truth. At the same time, sometimes people really are like, I'm thinking I could, maybe I want to do, private equity, and maybe I'd be okay doing corporate finance, and if you have more of a background where you've maybe worked in accounting in a controller's office or something, maybe that this is not the year to just, go from Teach for America to private equity. So I think that if you have a couple of, and I have all kinds of conversations with people about this, and I'm sure you do too, Melissa, where we're really trying to help people think about, there's maybe 2 or 3 things that you're thinking about. And then we're thinking, well, if you're equally passionate about that, or you be okay with either of those, let's also think about, where is the 2-foot wall and where's the 10-foot wall? You don't want to be knocked out of consideration just because your goal seems too much of a stretch. So, there's certainly, or letting admissions know that you realize this could be a 2-part change, where part 1 is a pivot, and then, you see 3 or 4 years down the road, you're actually getting to the change. So yeah, that's a very good point. This is definitely not the year to just, throw darts on a board and come up with something that is completely different than too far of a stretch. Yeah.
All right, great. I've got another one from a lawyer concerned that adcoms are suspicious of lawyers. Can I into banking or investment management from law.
Okay, I missed, you went a little choppy on the last part of that. So say that again.
Gotcha. So the question's from a lawyer concerned that adcoms are suspicious of lawyers and wondering if it's feasible to be moving into investment banking or investment management from law.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, again, if you were in a law, especially if you were in some kind of corporate law and you were involved in a lot of transactions and you were chomping at the bit because you felt like, you were only involved in the contracts, but not, in the number crunching, I think that you can definitely I've seen that transition happen before. Sometimes, so I don't think that's impossible. And again, I would not worry so much about what nameless face like that lawyers are suspicious or something. I wouldn't, don't spend time going down that rabbit hole. I think the more you can, again, obviously, if you are working in some kind of transactions where you are working with bankers, get advice from them about, what are some of the things that I really need to, specifically skills I need to gain, maybe around financial modeling. Maybe there's some courses that you can take even in it before you go to your MBA to show that you're serious about making that transition. So it's really, if the admissions person reading it believes that that again, this is not just something that you pulled out of a hat because you're bored, but that you really have done some digging and research and taken some effort, they want to help you on that journey. So I don't think that there's any, and certainly a lot of MBA programs, you don't see it as much anymore. I mean, I feel like there used to be more people who were getting their joint MBA, JD, and certainly they still do. But, there are people who do that. And there's always been a subset of people who blended those two backgrounds.
Yeah, and Donna, I would just jump in and say those might be good people to reach out to within the program as you're reaching out to get to talk with people that are doing the JD MBA and help understand why they made that choice as opposed to lawyer and then MBA later, and you might be able to learn some of the some of the nuances and how you can class by coming with your law degree already, especially with these people that are trying to get their JD and MBA at the same time.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting. You again always thinking about what is it that I have that can bring value to my classmates, right? So actually, being a lawyer, you might even be able to do some negotiation, like think about, I could help by helping my classmates with negotiations seminars, or helping role play with people in again some kind of negotiations process, and thinking about how that can be something that you add into the class to make you a more the MBA class is, if you think of it, is the admissions team wants to build a diverse quilt, where lots of different shapes, colors, sizes, flavors, something that has contrast. So again, having a lawyer or having someone who has, they want to have some of those people who have different backgrounds. So that's a good suggestion, though.
So I've got another one here, someone with a medical degree. So we've gone from law to medicine. She's a physician in India, and she's been working at a digital startup and looking to move more into the field of green technology, and really wants to use an MBA to make that change, and is wondering if that seems like too big of a change, or kind of getting if are good schools to look for that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think a natural, I don't know if you had this thought. I mean, of course, naturally, my thought is, wow, you make a huge investment in your time and money and life and all that to become a doctor, and then to switch to green energies does seem like a big shift. But I could see a scenario where maybe you just realize that, gosh, healthcare has a lot to do with, and people's health has a lot to do with, having a healthy environment, and maybe in seeing that through, people having chronic, illnesses or something that are potentially environmentally related. If you can explain that, or whatever is your truth, I wouldn't hold it against you. And I'm trying to think of, again, maybe schools that are really good at sort of known for sustainability, right? And environmental. I mean, Tuck comes to mind as a school that, Yale certainly has a lot of social impact, and social impact has both doing green and doing good in it.
I would say Haas as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Haas. Fuqua has a center for the. They have some sustainability and social impact. So that's a school. Yeah.
And the client that I was talking about earlier that was moving into energy, there's an energy conference at Booth. It's not a school generally pops to mind when you think of energy, but they've actually got a lot of resources behind energy. So it's a good school to look at as well.
Yeah, and actually, to that, there's a clean tech summit that UNC Keenan Flagler does every year, and that draws a lot of people, a lot of students, and is highly regarded. So I would say, to some degree, in terms of making that transition, also, if you see yourself being interested in a particular geography post MBA, so especially, if you think that you see yourself wanting to be on the West Coast, then I would say look a little bit harder at some of those West Coast schools. So maybe look more at Haas, or look more, Foster. It's up in Washington. Look at some of those programs. If you see yourself wanting to be in Midwest, then maybe look at some of the schools in Chicago, Booth or Kellogg. So I think that's another piece of it too, is really, where do I want to have my network? And while you can go anywhere from any of these MBA programs, and there's certainly global networks, I do think there's something to be said for, having, I think you have a deeper connection, and you probably leverage the network longer or more frequently if you're kind of, closer to that geography. So that's something else maybe to think about.
Yeah, I'm seeing a number of questions, or a number of people asking about consulting, post MBA. And I just wanted to add in, and Donna, please pipe in as well. I think consulting makes a lot of sense for a lot of people post MBA. I think what's really important is to then think about where consulting is going to take you long term. So while consulting can make a lot of sense, there need to be skills or something that you want to gain from consulting, unless consulting long-term is your long-term goal. That's all you want to do, and that's great as well. But you would want to explain that. But I think, there's kind of two pieces to this that's important: is the short-term goal post MBA, and then where is that going to take you additionally? Why is that short-term goal step to your long-term career?
And I'll add a couple things to what you're saying there. And there are certainly some schools that only ask about the short-term goal. So it may or may not come up in the essays, although often it does come up in the interview, in terms of how does this fit into your overall picture. But be aware that there are certain schools that ask only for the short-term goal, at least in an essay. They may ask for it in the short answer question in the application. And regarding consulting, one, I guess, tip I would give everybody is really don't just phone this in. So, if you say you want to do consulting, I think most people think MBB, and then they just stop there. And really, that if you just stop there, like I want to work at one of those three places, you've really not you've not really knocked yourself out. You could at least pick a particular practice, and certainly take the time to figure out, that, the retail practice for McKinsey, has a really big office in, Chicago or in Dallas, and the way you can figure some of that out is, look at, the website of some of these companies and these consulting firms, and look at where their practices are, and maybe look at who's on the team, and also reach out and talk to people in your network who may give you some insight. So try to be a little bit more specific about a practice area, and also maybe a niche, consulting firm. So that's not just one of those big three, and actually, so that it shows that admissions can see that you've taken the time to, actually learn a little bit more than just spouting out, McKinsey, where, certainly they hire people, but they're going to hire more people at certain schools than they do at other schools for sure. And I don't know that that really is all that impressive if you just say it like that in one of the, McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. That doesn't really go deep enough to convince admissions that you've really put a lot of thought into it. So.
Great. Got kind of two other more specific examples. If it's realistic to move into product management with about 2.5 years of tech experience. And then there was another example in there, but maybe we talk about that one first. And I can talk about, just since I work with a lot of engineers moving into product management, I think, moving into product management, having the engineering and the tech side can be very helpful to move into product management. So I think with 3.5 years of experience, it's up to you to make sure that you're explaining that you've got the time within business that's going to help you be successful when you come out on the other end from a product management standpoint. Don, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I didn't hear all. I think you chopped in a little bit in and out there, but was the question that, again, is 3.5 years of engineering enough to be able to move to tech product management? Was that the gist of the question?
Yeah, 2.5 years in tech and want to move into product management. I talked about it from an engineering side, but that wasn't necessarily in the question.
Yeah, well, I will say this. I think that the people who want to work in product management in tech have some kind of, it helps to have some kind of engineering or tech background before. Like, so if you're just coming in cold, where maybe you worked in sales and CPG, and now you're trying to do tech product management, that's going to be a bigger hurdle, not having the exposure to being in a tech firm. So I think that that's definitely helpful that he has the 2.5 years in tech to make that transition. And again, I would encourage him or her to reach out to schools that are interesting, to talk to maybe the tech club, talk to the marketing club, and really do some reality checks of, hey, is there somebody with my background that I can see that they have a pathway, that they're following and successfully following the path that I hope to follow. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe ask them what they did, what clubs did they join, how were they able to make that transition, and have a little bit of a playbook. Again, everybody's going to have their own, everybody's still unique enough that you're not going to be 100% matched to somebody else, but, learn from people who have similar backgrounds and then see, how they made these transitions.
Great. It looks like maybe we have time for one last question. Someone with a biotech research experience and looking to move more into a managerial role and looking for some schools suggestions.
Okay. So looking at leadership role in what, in the biotech or in?
I'm assuming within the biotech. It doesn't say want to move into more of a managerial role. So within that same industry.
So I think that, just then thinking about schools that are just, and again, all MBA programs have general management, but, certainly thinking about schools that are known to have just sort of a, broad focus on leadership. And I don't know why Ross jumps out in my head, just because I know they also have a lot of, that's just one that jumped out in my head to think about. Harvard, but I don't know what kind of background. I mean, the thing about Harvard is, yes, they're known for leadership, but they're not known for making you a leader. They're known for taking leaders who are already leaders and helping them make a difference in the world, right? So again, if this person has some leadership already, then certainly that could be, and any schools really around large, like biotech. So just thinking about schools within the biotech hub areas. So schools, Silicon Valley, Boston, to some lesser degree, even this Research Triangle Park, which is where I'm located in North Carolina. And I think that would be some good places to go to look for your MBA.
I just wanted to add to that, Donna, thinking about schools that have a large either healthcare system associated that might have some biotech, because I think then you can really show how you can add to that program with your biotech skills, also gaining those managerial skills yourself. So you're showing what you can bring to the table. I think would be a big win for you with programs that have strong healthcare or biotech programs as well within other parts of the school, not just within the business school program.
Yeah, definitely. And like some of those, Boston is, Chicago. I mean, major, some of the major, but so that's a good way, I think, to at least start making your short list and then go from there.
All right. I think we're at noon.
Okay.
We've got a couple more. I'm not sure if we can keep going on questions.
I don't know. Maybe just one more.
Okay. So we've got someone I'm lost. 3 years in a tech startup and a big 5 digital agency, and looking to move into a product management role in, oh goodness, FAANG. I need some.
So the tech company, so Facebook, Amazon, Netflix. That kind of
Thank you. I'm learning something here today too. I did not.
And so they're saying, do we feel like that's
right from ad tech and a digital agency to a product management marketing role in an FAANG type company?
Yeah, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, I think is right. I mean, so I think this person, it seems like they have already, again, at least having some tech experience and obviously in a smaller way in a startup, but if there's some expertise that they have that, could be valuable to these larger companies, I think that getting an MBA and gaining more skills certainly could be helpful. One program, and I'm sure this person is perhaps already aware of this, but Kellogg has that Triple M program, and that has just been a favorite hunting grounds for recruiters for these kinds of companies. So that might be a program to look into, maybe talk to some students there. But yeah, I don't think that there's any reason that and again, this could be something where maybe having a conversation on a consult where we could go into the specifics of that a little bit more, but I don't see any reason why that can't happen.
All right. Sorry. Trying to get, I'm too long. I keep typing answers, people, and they're too long. I'm too verbose. All right. Let's see. We've got one more. Looking at MBA to understand about industry operations, learn what growth equity funds look like and how they build their pipeline, how a VC funds. So Madhav, if you could tell me what you're coming from. I mean, so it looks like you're looking to get into kind of the finance industry ops and potentially VC long-term. That's something that's definitely doable with an MBA. VC jobs out of business school, directly out of business school, are far and few between. They are definitely there, but they're very competitive. So you just want to make sure that you've done some research to show that the skills that you have and what you can build within a business school program can get you into that VC world. Donna, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, well, so that kind of lends in again to maybe my example and to look a little bit about the client I had that went to Booth. Again, I think that there are certain schools, and you can look at employment reports to see, what are the percentage of students that are going to PE VC right out of the program. And certainly, Booth jumps out, Wharton jumps out. Interestingly, Kellogg has the new dean, Francesca Cornelli, who was the head of, she ran a private equity lab at London Business School and is now at Kellogg. I think there are definitely some great resources there. So Chicago schools, Columbia, Stern, I think there are definitely some programs where, again, do your research, and also do your research in terms of, I didn't mention any West Coast schools. I guess it goes without saying, Harvard, Stanford would also be, places to look, but do your homework and look at programs where you feel like there's going to be some experiential learning opportunities for you to make that transition, both in the classroom, maybe through, internships that are, or opportunities to work somewhere while you're in the program. So yeah, I think that's definitely going to be important in terms of researching where you might select as a program.
Great.
Well, I know they probably run I don't know how tight the ship is, but I know that there's all kinds of webinars going on right now on GMAT Club. And again, all of you who are listening, good for you for trying to use this time productively to think about how to approach MBA admissions and give yourself the best chance. You definitely have a lot of time. If you're looking, for most of you at round one, this is exactly the time you should be doing all this pre-work and research so that you're ready to go and apply. Some of you might be accelerated if you're applying right now in a round three. And if you are, definitely wish you the best. But yeah, I think that's happy to help. And it's always, so it's fun, like I said, to be on the GMAT Club and talking as opposed to just typing. So.
And I'll just add thanks to everybody for your questions. And, if we didn't get all your answers in, feel free to reach out and join us for a consult. We'd love to talk further about your specific situation and help you go a little deeper and talk about your plans. So you can sign up for a consult. I think the link is on the page there. You can just Google Stratus Admissions Consult and it should pop up as well.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for your time.
All right. So I guess I'm not quite sure how to get out of this, but I guess we'll figure it out. Stop sharing. That might be the first step. Okay. Let's see.